Fernando Alonso has always been known as a driver who pushes past the absolute limits of risk. But on the sun-drenched afternoon of March 20th, 2016, at Melbourne's Albert Park Circuit, he found himself in a terrifying place where pure driving skill was completely useless against the laws of physics. Hurtling down the track at 313 kilometers per hour, his car instantly transformed into an uncontrollable missile following a massive collision with Esteban Gutierrez's Haas, launching into the air, barrel rolling violently, and smashing into the safety barriers until it became a twisted heap of smoking carbon fiber. The entire world held its breath as they looked at the mangled wreckage of the McLaren, but just seconds later, a hand emerged from the debris, followed by the driver himself, who completely defied the grim logic of the crash by climbing out of the cockpit unaided and standing firmly on his own 2 feet. This spectacular survival stands as one of the most powerful proofs that modern Formula One is not just a triumph of raw speed, but a masterpiece of advanced engineering capable of preserving human life in the very epicenter of a kinetic energy explosion. The dramatic chain of events on lap 17 of the Australian Grand Prix unfolded with breathtaking speed, leaving absolutely zero time for hesitation. Alonso was actively setting up an overtake on Gutierrez's Haas in the heavy braking zone approaching turn 3, maximizing the straight-line speed advantage of his open DRS rear wing. Just as the Spanish champion shifted to the outside line to seal the pass, a fatal misunderstanding occurred as Gutierrez began moving back toward the racing apex slightly earlier than Fernando anticipated. At such an extreme velocity, even the slightest wheel-to-wheel contact triggers an instant catastrophe. The front right tire of the McLaren struck the rear left wheel of the Haas at tilt. Mechanically, this caused the front end of Alonso's car to launch skyward immediately, as the opposing rotation of the spinning tires acted like interlocking gears that violently propelled the chassis upward. The McLaren instantly lost all contact with the tarmac, slammed hard into the concrete retaining wall on the left, and upon digging into the gravel trap at terminal velocity, commenced a series of terrifying high-speed flips. At the exact moment the chassis began its violent rotations through the air, the onboard sensors recorded a staggering peak impact force of 46 Gs. To fully grasp the sheer magnitude of that number, it means the driver's body briefly weighed nearly 3.5 tons for a fraction of a second. Inside the cockpit, Fernando felt as though he had been thrown into a high-powered centrifuge, later recalling that his vision was reduced to a chaotic and alternating blur of sky and ground. In those precise moments, the human brain operates in a state of hyper-concentration, completely shutting down fear to focus entirely on basic survival instincts. His primary sensation was not intense pain, but profound disorientation, a stark realization that he was trapped inside a disintegrating machine. When the broken chassis finally came to a halt upside down, Alonso immediately smelled leaking fuel and swirling dust, and his very first thought was that he needed to get out right away. He knew his mother was watching the live broadcast back home in Spain, and he realized that staying trapped inside the wreckage for even an extra 10 seconds would put her through the most agonizing moment of her life. The technical miracle behind Alonso's survival is rooted entirely in the intricate design of the safety cell, widely known as the monocoque. The monocoque forms the central core of the car and is meticulously crafted from layered carbon fiber sandwich panels bonded to an internal aluminum honeycomb structure. Weight for weight, this material is multiple times stronger than high-strength steel. During a major impact, every other component of the vehicle, including the side pods, the power unit, and the suspension assemblies, is deliberately engineered to shatter and break away. This is the foundational principle of passive safety engineering. Every single piece of carbon fiber that rips off and every structure that crushes absorbs a massive portion of the immense kinetic energy generated at 300 kilometers per hour. As Alonso's McLaren disintegrated into pieces across the gravel trap, it was effectively bleeding off that lethal impact energy into the environment, keeping the internal space of the cockpit perfectly intact. Crucial energy-absorbing impact structures located along the sides and within the nose cone of the car played a monumental role. They crumpled exactly as intended during the design phase, functioning precisely like the crumple zones of a road car, but engineered to an incomparably higher standard. Furthermore, the Hans device, the head and neck support system, proved to be an absolutely critical lifesaver. Under a 46 G deceleration, A driver's head and helmet become so incredibly heavy that human neck muscles are physically incapable of supporting them, which historically led to fatal basilar skull fractures. The Hans system utilized its specialized tethers to strictly limit the forward movement of the helmet, safely redistributing those violent forces away from the neck and onto Alonso's shoulders and ribcage. The driver's seat, custom molded to the exact contours of his body, held him perfectly secure, preventing any dangerous spinal compression inside the monocoque. From a technical standpoint, the car completely split into two primary segments during the course of the accident, with the entire rear assembly containing the engine and gearbox being violently sheared off, a separation that actually helped by instantly reducing the total mass of the flying object and softening the final impact. The heavy wheels were prevented from turning into loose, lethal projectiles thanks to high-strength Xylon tethers, a space-age material that keeps the wheel assemblies anchored to the main monocoque, even when the suspension wishbones are completely obliterated. Although the crash felt like an eternity to Alonso while it was happening, only a few seconds passed from the initial point of contact to the moment the car stopped. His physical ability to escape the inverted wreckage was entirely guaranteed by the fact that the cockpit opening suffered zero structural deformation, successfully maintaining its exact geometric dimensions despite repeatedly striking the ground and barriers. Once the initial rush of adrenaline finally faded away, a rigorous medical examination revealed that Fernando had suffered a partial pneumothorax, which is a collapsed lung, along with multiple fractured ribs. The fact that he was able to pull himself out of the debris and even wave to the concerned spectators with those specific injuries speaks volumes about the elite physical conditioning required of modern Formula One athletes. Doctors subsequently barred him from competing in the following World Championship round in Bahrain, given that the risk of a secondary impact on an already damaged lung could have been fatal. However, the sheer scale of this crash served as a powerful catalyst for the sport to mandate even stricter safety innovations, including the titanium halo cockpit protection arc that was introduced a couple of seasons later. Engineers meticulously analyzed every single millimeter of Alonso's damaged monocoque to gather vital data on how to make driver protection even more robust. This violent collision in Melbourne proved that even when multi-million-dollar machinery spins completely out of control at speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour, rigorous science can build an impenetrable barrier between a human being and death. The pulverized remains of that McLaren became a true monument to engineering genius, and Fernando Alonso stands as living proof that racing safety has successfully evolved from the grim fatalism of the 1960s to the absolute mathematical precision of the 21st century. It was a historic moment where sport transcended a simple race for speed and became a breathtaking demonstration of how humanity has learned to tame the most destructive forces of nature to preserve human life. Every single component of the car's construction, from the microscopic carbon fibers to the highly complex aerodynamic calculations, worked in perfect harmony that day, allowing a great champion to walk back into the paddock entirely under his own power. Incredibly, right after the dust settled, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Gutierrez met face-to-face right there in the gravel trap next to the smoking ruins. There was absolutely no anger or resentment between them, only a brief, respectful handshake and a quick check on each other's well-being. This profound moment highlights the unique brotherhood within the drivers' community, who trust their lives not only to their own team's technical expertise, but also to the immense professionalism of their rivals every time they step onto the track. The 2016 crash remains etched in the minds of motorsport fans not as a tragedy, but as one of the greatest escapes in racing history, reinforcing Formula One's status as the most technologically advanced and safest racing discipline in the world, where engineers always leave the driver a definitive chance to walk away.